find him when he's hanging around. If you're online as well, you can find him online. His handle is on the screen as well. So thank you so much. All right, while we get the next speaker set up, I do want to give a shout out because one thing I just discovered is that recently got the emergency notifications to tell you that there's traffic. Which is hilarious. But I'm going to ask all the favors to happen a few times. If you can, please turn your phones onto silent or onto vibrate mode, just so that they don't disturb. I really appreciate the Greece's government for telling me that there was congestion on a specific road. But let's not disturb the speakers. So please put your phones on silent as well. And we will continue going on with the conference as well. So now we're going to have our next talk is actually going to be about Expo. Just curious, how many people have at some point played around with Expo? Yeah, a few people. How many people use Expo maybe in a professional capacity, that you're actually using it at work? Okay, a few people. All right, nice to see. Nice to see. Well, it's always really nice. Like I'm a React developer, and one thing I love, especially about React Native, is being able to extend from just the browser on the web into applications on the phones. And it's always exciting when I have an opportunity to do that. We're having a very big Zoom. Oh, it's good. It's going well. All right, that's great. That's good to see. All right, so I'm going to get out of the way. We are going to have a wonderful. Not yet. Not yet. We have a classic Zoom moment. Can you see my screen in real life? It's really funny how we have all of these phrases that were new on Zoom and technically were just reiterations of stuff.
Where's this stream yard?
I'm going to buy us some time. And while I do that, I would like to just find out where in the world people have come from. All right, so how many people here in this room are from Greece, from Athens, actually, to be a bit more specific? Okay, and I'm guessing probably took you up to an hour, probably less than an hour to get there. How many people are from Greece but you're not based in Athens? How do I get this? Oh, nice. Where are you based? Do you mind shouting out? Crete. Nice. And you, I think there was some hands over there. Where are you based? You want to shout out? Crete as well. And somewhere else? Laxa. Oh, is that a nice holiday destination? Okay, I'll definitely go. All right. Are there any folks who are based outside of Greece? You kind of come from a different country. All right. I see a few hands. Someone in the back row. Where are you folks from? Shout out. Poland. I was in Poland 2 weeks ago. I went to Kraman for the first time. Beautiful city, amazing food. What city are you from in Poland? Nice. Now I've actually my travel list. I think I saw a few other international folks. USA as well. Anyone else? Any other countries? Spain. All right. Actually, why don't we do a little exercise? Who's traveled the furthest? So who's maybe taken more than 5 hours to get here? And definitely the USA. Where are you from? From Greece. It takes more than 5 hours to get here. Wow. Okay, that's impressive. All right. Well, it didn't take 5 hours. Actually, I don't know how long it took on speaker to get here. But I know that they've actually been on the road because I've been running into them at many other conferences across Europe. They are experts, in my opinion, in Expo, and they're going to be telling us all about it. They're actually a software developer at Expo, and they have been sharing information about Expo with developers all around Europe. But also, when they are crafting code on their keyboard, they are crafting real life use. So they like cross-stitching. So if you have any cross-stitch patterns you really like, maybe you can share it with our next speaker. Enough of me. Let's give a massive round of applause for our next speaker, Kadi.
Wow, thank you so much. And I feel like, so as you can tell, I didn't get to do a tech check. It was kind of a tech check live. So I would like just to give a massive round of applause to our MC for keeping us entertained while I deal with this. Thank you so much. Amazing. So, hi everyone, my name is Kadi. I'm a software developer at Expo. And what a beautiful sunny day to talk about the state of Expo and cross-platform React. So here's what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to look at what is a React Native framework and how it is different from React Native. Then, what are the limitations of Expo Go and how they can be overcome using development builds. We'll look at briefly into adding custom native code to your Expo app. And finally, the present and future of building universal apps with React Native. So first up, the difference between React Native and a React Native framework. React was first made available to the public in 2013, and React Native 2 years later. So what is React Native compared to React? Well, React is a UI library for building component-based JavaScript apps for the web. And React Native gives us the ability to run this React code on the native iOS and Android platforms. So the special and really powerful thing about this is that React Native apps are real native apps underneath. So when we render a text using React Native, it's not secretly rendering this in HTML. It is using the real native text elements for each platform. This is really important for just that native look and feel, and also for performance. And a huge amount of work goes into making this even possible. We have Metro for bundling. We have JSI for communicating between the native and JavaScript layers. We have Fabric, the native renderer, and of course, Hermes, the JavaScript runtime that's built specifically for running JavaScript on native platforms. And on top of this core rendering functionality, React Native also ships with the most fundamental components, like your view, your text input. But it doesn't actually ship with everything you need to build your production app. So, for example, React Native doesn't ship with a navigation system, the ability to send push notifications, or access to your phone camera. But this is not an oversight. It has never been a goal of React Native to provide these things. Actually, we've gone the other way. There's been functionality that used to be built into React Native that was moved outside and turned into a community package, such as async storage. And that's because the React team is small, and they are focused on the internals of React and React Native. So instead, we get the APIs for surfacing these capabilities to React, and it's up to us, the users, to actually do it. So if you've ever built a React Native app, I'm pretty sure you would have used quite a few of these React Native libraries out there. Libraries for navigation, animations, storage, etc. And Meta has been seeking to draw a clearer line between what is the role of React Native, so what is provided out of the box, versus what the community should do themselves. And they have. This was formalized last month at ReactConf, when Meta announced React Native frameworks. A React Native framework is a collection of tools and services that helps you build apps with React Native. Libraries for accessing native capabilities, not included in core, tools for managing native code, and actually just building and deploying your apps. So when you look at the Getting Started documentation for React Native, you'll see a recommendation that you should use a React Native framework for newly created apps. This isn't a new concept, by the way. The React docs have the same thing. So if you're starting a new React app, you'll probably want to use a framework. You'd use Next.js or Remix or Redwood.js. There was a public RFC early in the year that outlined this proposal for React Native. Specifically, it clarifies what is the role of React Native versus the React Native framework, and all the requirements a library would have to complete to become a framework. And Expo is a React Native framework, a collection of tools and services for building production-ready apps with React Native. The way it actually looks in practice is that you can use as few or as many Expo tools as you like. Since we build them all, they work really well together, but there's no requirement to use everything. So, for example, you could use EAS to build your app without even having the Expo SDK installed. Or you could install the Expo SDK to an existing React Native project and use libraries like Expo Video, Notifications, SQLite, without using any other tools. Thousands of apps are using Expo tools in production today. Companies like Coinbase, SpaceX, Blue Sky, Brex. And of course, you can use React and React Native without a framework. But there's a quote that the folks at Meta really like to say, which is that you're either using a framework or you're building your own framework. That is, you're solving all the same problems, but in an ad hoc manner. And not everyone has time for that. So that was React Native versus a React Native framework. Let's move on to Expo Go and development builds. The team at Expo has worked very closely with the React Native teams at Meta since React Native has first launched. You'll see commits from the you'll see commits in React Native core from Expo team members that date back all the way to 2015. We were the first to publish community libraries for React Native. This was only a couple of months after React Native initially released. We created React Native Directory, which is a place for searching React Native libraries. We were the first external contributors to run a release of React Native, helped add async functions to React Native, and most recently, we helped Meta ship the new architecture to open source. So arriving at the React Native framework didn't just happen overnight. It is a result of a decade of learning, listening to the community, and iterating. Let's face it, with all the platform-specific nuance, native development is kind of hard, especially when you come from the web. So the goal of Expo since the very beginning has been to make native app development experience more similar to that of web development. And the earliest and first attempt at this was Expo Go. It's our little sandbox app for React Native development. It was built to solve a very important problem to do with the barrier to entry when you first start building a React Native app. This is what a React Native app consists of. We have our native app bundle. So this is all the native code and is actually installable on your device. And we have a JavaScript bundle that runs inside your native app that actually calls the shots. And during development, you generally build this JavaScript bundle on your local machine. To create this JavaScript bundle, it's pretty straightforward. You can do it on Mac, Windows, Linux, and you only need the JavaScript build tools to create it. And it might take a few minutes to set up. For the native app, it's really not that simple. You need the native build tools, so Android Studio or Xcode. You need to handle a security step called build signing to actually be able to install it on your device. And the initial setup can honestly take hours. And furthermore, to build iOS apps, you need a device running macOS. So for users of Windows or Linux who want to build for iOS app, it's simply not possible. So this is our native app box. And I've only installed React Native for now. Say that I wanted to render some text. Sure, no worries. It's included in core package for React Native, so go for it. View, again, go for it, including React Native. What about accessing the phone camera? No, I'm afraid you're out of luck. You need to install a package. The native iOS and Android platforms, of course, have the ability to access the phone camera, but it's not actually exposed to the JavaScript side by default. So we installed the library, and it comes with some JavaScript code, and also the native code that actually bridges the camera functionality. So the JavaScript bundle, we can rebuild it quite easily, but the native bundle, not so much. You need the native build tools to rebuild your app with the native code included. So how can we let people use the camera in their apps, but still have them develop only in JavaScript? Well, we need to include this library in our native build. So in it goes. And quite a few more libraries. Basically the whole of what is now the Expo SDK, plus some dev tools and additional community libraries like Reanimated, and we ship it to the stores. And that's pretty much what Expo Go is. It's a native app with a whole bunch of native capabilities and debug tools pre-installed by default, so you could develop in JavaScript and only hook into the embedded native libraries as and when needed. So the camera is now available. And everything else you might need? Yeah, unfortunately, not quite. There's a few problems with this approach. So there's a limit to how many things we can bundle our little Expo Go app. There's always going to be more libraries in open source than we have room in our phones. And we, as Expo, need to be opinionated. It makes little sense to include several libraries bridging the same kind of functionality, so we need to choose one, and then that will be the only one you can use. We can't bundle any native libraries that require custom inputs within a native bundle, such as React Native Firebase. And for the libraries we do bundle, we only have one version in the SDK. So if a new feature is published or a fix is released, you need to wait for the new Expo Go release to actually get it. And there's no real way to patch it. So for these reasons, we don't recommend Expo Go for production apps, because you should have more control over your development environment. Expo Go absolutely is going to stick around, by the way, as it's the fastest way to get started. It's great for learning, great for prototyping, and there's more than enough libraries there for a lot of use cases, and you can usually create a proof of concept just with Expo Go. But ultimately, with Expo Go, you are limited, and we want to fix that. Then how can we improve the React Native developer experience, but without the limitations of Expo Go? Our solution to this is development builds. Development builds are basically your own custom version of Expo Go with just the native code you need. A debug build or a React Native app that includes the Expo Dev client. And we use it for development, so we call it a development build. Very creative. Let's go through a typical use case on a project. You create a new project with npx create Expo app, you see the internet, and you run npx expo start. The default template only uses libraries included in Expo Go, meaning that you can install Expo Go and just immediately see it on your phone, simulator, emulator, and just get started within minutes in Windows, Linux, macOS. You can run on any device, and you not have to install any native build tooling. So at this point, if you're learning about development, or you're building a prototype, or just at the beginning of your project, you can keep using Expo Go for as long as it makes sense. But eventually, there will become a time when you need to add something, a library, a capability that's not in Expo Go. And this is where the development build comes in. We first need to install the Expo Dev client to have access to the dev tools that exist in Expo Go. The next step is to actually build the native app. And for that, we need some native code. This is the structure of a React Native project. We have a source folder for your JavaScript code and the iOS and Android folders for the native code for each platform. But if you've been developing with Expo Go, your app code base probably looks a bit more like this. This project is also using Expo Router, so we have our app folder for our file system-based routing and a components folder and really no native code in sight. You can't build a native app without any native code, but you can generate it with CNG. So CNG stands for Continuous Native Generation. It basically means that we're using our app config to generate our native projects. So we can use npx expo prebuild, which is the command that actually does this native generation. And now in the past, at this point, before CNG and the tooling that goes around it, you would have had to manage these native directories yourself. But now with CNG, our recommended workflow is to actually add these folders to your git ignore and never edit them directly and always regenerate them when you need to do a native build. Imagine how easy that makes React Native upgrade experience. Now, at this point, you do actually need to build this native app. And the one way to do this is, of course, on your local machine. You install Android Studio, you install Xcode, and run the builds. But we really wanted there to be a way for you to do this without building locally, to keep the JavaScript-focused dev experience we enjoyed with Expo Go. And the way to do this is to build in the cloud with EAS. EAS, Expo Application Services, is our cloud service that helps you build, develop, and deploy React Native apps. I think it's really important to note here that you don't have to use EAS to use Expo, and conversely, you don't have to use Expo to use EAS. You can always build locally, use a different cloud service, just like you can with any other React Native app. And not only that, all the EAS build commands can actually be executed on your local machine if you add the local flag. The point is, there's plenty of options outside of EAS, but we think it's a really handy service for a lot of use cases. This is an EAS JSON file, which is used to configure the various types of builds on EAS. They can be triggered locally and via a CLI command. In the default config file, you get the dev, preview, and production profiles. And the development build profile is the one you want to use for your local development. You'll see that it has dev client 2 and distribution internal, which means that it can be installed outside of the app stores, and it includes the dev client for local debugging. Using a CI for local development might sound a bit crazy at first, but given that in a React Native app, the majority of development is actually done on a JavaScript side, it makes sense. Let me show you what I mean. This is a video of me triggering a build of my Android app using the EAS CLI. Since this is the very first time I'm building this app, the CLI creates the project for me on expo.dev and asks me if I want to create a key store. That's the thing you need to sign your Android build to install it on a device. And yes, please. My local code then gets uploaded to EAS and the build is kicked off. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the CLI tool created my signing credentials for me. In fact, it handles creating, updating, and deleting all the signing credentials for dev and production for both iOS and Android. This will be done in minutes. The build artifacts are stored in the cloud, so you can install them directly on the website or via a QR code, or with Expo Orbit. In fact, the rest of your team could actually use the same development build as well. Hopefully, this has given you some insight into the limitations of Expo Go and how they can be overcome with development builds. Now let's look briefly into how you could add custom native code in your Expo app. React Native community libraries with auto-linking already work out of the box, by the way. This is about your own custom native modules. And the way to do this, we have Expo Modules API. It's an API for writing custom native modules for your React Native app with Swift and Kotlin. To get started, you can use this npx command to create a new module. Now, this will create a new project with everything set up, just ready to release to NPM. Or you can use the local flag to set it up to use inside your private repository. In the module, you have a place for your native iOS, Android, and web code, as well as an example app already set up for testing. Here's an example of a Hello World module where we call a function to receive a greeting from the native code with implementations for web, Android, and iOS. Then in your React Native code, you can call a single function to render the platform-specific greeting for each platform. So you can use the Expo Modules API to build additional native capabilities for your own app or share with the community. So that's how you add custom native code to your Expo app. Lastly, let's talk about universal React Native. Being able to write React code in both web and mobile platforms opens the door to creating truly universal experiences. And it actually starts quite innocuously with Expo Router. I think most people are familiar with file system-based routing for the web, but let me show you how we made it work for mobile. Here we have a stack navigator with 2 screens and a button to navigate between them. With Expo Router, all of your app routes are defined in the app folder. And the key to making this work on React Native is the layout file, which is how we organize the screens and declare how they should be rendered, as tabs, a module, or in this case, a stack. Notice that I didn't need to list out all the routes in a stack because this info is implicit from the file system. You would, in most cases, still define the screens, though, to provide additional options such as header buttons, styling, or in this case, titles for the screens. So with Expo Router, you can create a truly native navigation experience for Android and iOS. Not only that, but you can also target the web. That's right, in the same code base, you can build for iOS, Android, web, and tvOS, making code sharing a real possibility. And one thing you get basically for free with Expo Router is universal linking. You know how web apps are increasingly integrated with their mobile counterparts? If you're using file system-based navigation, it makes deep linking to specific pages in your mobile app, or vice versa, really straightforward. And on top of this, we've also added API routes. Adding plus API to a file in your app folder turns it into an API route, and you can write get and post requests there. For React Native, this is actually beyond exciting because it's the first time ever we have an easy way to write server-side code for our React Native app in our React Native code base. This has many benefits, but the one that I'm the most excited about is that finally there is an actual, simple, secure way of handling secrets. And for a last glimpse of what's coming, we have React Server Components. So in one code base, with platform-specific server components that run natively on web and mobile. Evan did a truly amazing demo of this at App.js, and honestly, I think you should just go and watch his talk on YouTube if you haven't. It's so cool. I'm just going to share my favorite part. He was showing the proof of concept of an AI-driven chatbot with server components that had native integrations with Spotify, Uber, contacts. And this is at the end of the live demo, and he's asked the chatbot for a currency conversion from Polish zloty to US dollars. And he goes, hold on, actually chatbots, they can write code, often successfully, so we could just ask the bot to write us a currency conversion component. And so he asked the bots to write a currency conversion component, and it takes a little while. You can see the server logs in the background, by the way, so it's all live. Anyway, once the code comes back, he shows it in a little inline editor and actually renders it in a React Native app. And it works, which completely blows my mind. That's wild. Anyway, I think that's more than enough for me, I think. So the main things to take away: Expo is a React Native framework, giving you the tools and services for building production-ready apps with React Native. Expo Go is a sandbox app for learning and prototyping. For production apps, we recommend development builds, which support native code and libraries. And tools like CNG, content plugins, and the Expo Modules API are there to help you manage the native side of your app. And finally, keep an eye on Expo Router, quite possibly the future of universal React Native. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kadi. Let's give up for one more time. All right, so we slowly run time, but before we go on much, I just want to ask if there are any questions in the room for Kadi about Expo, maybe about Expo's future, which you can talk about, and maybe any questions about where to find out more. So if you do have a question, raise your hand. If you also have a question as well, raise it so I can come to you next. Thank you, great talk.
Thank you.
I am also user with Expo and React Native, and the question that I had, the problem that I had with routing in general was, nested routes. How will Expo handle those? Like, let's say that I have a start, like 3 levels of routes. How will that work? Because I haven't set out how it's going to be.
Right. There's lots of different mechanisms in routing. Okay, sorry. Don't need to go there.
That's fine.
Hello. Yeah, so there's quite a lot of nuance in a file system-based routing. So one thing, for example, you do is you can have you can group routes. So you can have like groupings of routes that don't actually show up in your file path. But in most cases, you would just have like each segment of your URL or path for each stack. I think it depends on the use case, but I'd say that's the most common one. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, we got one over here as well.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I would like to ask, because I was using React Native from 2016-17, and I've seen a lot of users of Expo that they are trying Expo for the prototyping and moving to React Native CLI for the main production builds. So you're having the export, the eject of the export. And I was thinking now in this era that all the packages are being left behind because all the Expo packages are now well maintained. If there is actually a strategic move from Expo or something for all the React Native applications can easily be migrated back to Expo. If there is any plan like this or any guides, anything. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I say, I'm so glad that you're here because you're exactly who I was hoping to give this talk to. So I think over time, so in the earlier days, because of Expo Go, it was exactly what you said. You build until you have this native functionality that isn't included, and then you check. We don't use that word anymore, by the way. It's a dirty word. Yeah, and then you're kind of on your own. So this is what we've tried to fix with CNG and continuous native development and all these tools to add the native code. So your question was, if you have a CLI project, like, should you migrate to Expo? And we have a documentation for it. So it's like, I think it's like Expo for existing apps. And it shows you all the different things. So I had like a slide of that as well, of that we provide and which ones are easy to integrate. So things like just starting to use the Expo SDK, you just install it on any CLI created project and it will just work. Things like EAS will just work, updates will just work. But things like CNG, so migrating from managing your native directories yourself to doing it with CNG, like it's a lot of effort and might not be worth it just for the initial try. So it's more like for new projects, that's an option you have. For all the projects, I would look at leveraging like just the SDK libraries to begin with. Thank you.
Awesome. So if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to give them to Kadi afterwards and give her a round of applause again. We actually have a prize here, which is a book called The Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization. And I was told to give it to the best answer. I can't pick the best answer. So I'm just going to flip a coin. Heads and tails. I don't have real coins, so I got a flip a coin app. And a drum roll. Can I get a drum roll, please? The winner is tails. And your name is, remind me? George has just won the Ultimate Guide to React Native Optimization book. That's awesome. We actually have another that will be given out as a prize at the next React Native talk, which is going to be later on today. So make sure you ask some questions to get a chance to win it as well. All right, it's lunchtime. Go grab some food, and I'll see you in about an hour.
Great job.